Aloha, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today. I'm just going to give just a minute or two to have everyone kind of come over from the main room. I think people are coming back from break and joining us. As we get started, just to let you know that this will be videotaped today. The chat is never available to be seen by other people, even though we are recording. So be comfortable in knowing there's some anonymity there. Also, I want this to be interactive. And so the topic of this training today is just to talk about how we make meaning, which I think I didn't exactly know what Dr. Meyer was going to be talking about today, but then after having gone through that and had such a beautiful healing process, like it's such a really great compliment to be able then to come into here and to talk a little bit about how during times of challenge and stress, we learn about ourselves and we learn how to take what we believe, no matter what that may be, and to use that to cope and to heal through the process, which is what we're absolutely going to be talking about today. So we're just going to take just a minute or two because I saw a couple people come in. Feel free to drop any kind of questions or comments into the chat because, again, I want this to be very interactive. We're going to be talking our way through this healing process and sharing. And even though we might come from different schools of beliefs, I think the importance of making that meaning is going to be something that we all share. Okay, probably because I don't have a lot of patience. So I will wait a few minutes and then I'm like 30 seconds later. Okay. Yes, feel free to get to know one another in the chat, dropping comments. My name is Dr. Mestisa. I'm the Program Director for Mental Health America of Hawaii. If you've attended any of our community trainings, my face probably looks very familiar to you. I know my name is kind of a mouthful, so most people do call me Dr. G. Feel free to use that. I used to work with kids. That's where I got that kind of nomer from because they were never going to say my full name. So yes, feel free to call me Dr. G. And let's kind of get into some of our presentation today. What we're going to be talking about is, and because I do come from a little bit more of a clinical background, you're going to see references to different kinds of articles, and it's going to sound a little bit clinical at parts, but I promise you the point of this is to be highly interactive. So some of the things that we're going to be working on learning today is just a very quick talk about the impact of what we have recently been through on mental health, talking about the role that meaning making. And when I say meaning making, that really is just your belief system, whether it comes from an organized religion place, a spiritual place that's non-defined, or just a place of talking about and understanding your values, your beliefs, and your morals. We're going to look at embracing the whole self. Holism, I think, has been something that Dr. Meyer was talking about, and I'm going to take it from a little bit more of a psychology bend, but absolutely applicable in other ways. We're going to talk about how to make meaning throughout and do a couple of small exercises. If you're one of those people who likes to take notes, as you go through exercises, please feel free to go and get paper and pen now, but you won't need anything else. And you don't have to have paper and pen to participate in the exercises. And of course, I'm going to give you some resources. This will be taped. I'll be doing this in the second breakout as well. That will also be taped. And then I'm going to also provide a PDF of all the slides. I did see a couple of chats coming in, so I just wanted to check those. Hi, everyone. So the first thing I want to do, because this morning, right? I put this in here because I wanted to make sure that we were grounded and in a safe space before we moved through into talking about some other things. Little did I know how much I would actually personally need this, and we went through some of this. But I want to talk first about breath. Breath is such an important and such, it can seem oversimplified as an intervention, but it is such a crucial, if not the most crucial thing to do when we start to ground. And with everything that we've been learning this morning and with the space that we've been in, what we're going to do is we're just going to take a couple of minutes to practice some diaphragmatic breathing. For those of you who are really well versed in it, you're just going to be practicing it in a second. And for those of you who are just a little less familiar, what you're going to do is you're going to simply put a hand over your belly button and you're going to try to take in a really deep breath and try to move that hand more than your chest. So you can, if you want to, put a hand on the chest apart and then a hand right on the belly button, and then just take a really deep breath. You're going to notice that both hands move, but your objective is to make that lower hand move more than the upper one. I'm a little snotty right now, so some people will breathe in through their mouth, hold for a few seconds, and out through their nose, but I'm going to have to breathe through my mouth. So let's try it again, just taking in a really deep breath, holding it for a few seconds, as much as is comfortable for you, and then slowly letting that back out. What we're going to do is just apply this method. I'm going to be playing a very simple 4-minute meditation. It's about jellyfish, which isn't important. I wanted it to be visually like enrapturing. I wanted the music to be relaxing. And so I chose to do one of our meditations. But if that's not something that you're interested in doing right now, that's also okay. Feel free to close your eyes, process through some of what you were learning about earlier today or feeling earlier today in the conference, and just relax through those 4 minutes if that's what you'd prefer to do. I'm going to see if I can get the sound. So I'm going to unplug my headphones. Everyone hear that? Switch. So hopefully everyone can hear me okay. We're going to talk very briefly just about a little bit of last year and how it's impacted our mental health. And to be honest, we really don't know all of it yet. Typically, how research works is that it takes a year or two before you start to really get those numbers in, but we've been pushing it as much as possible just to get a clearer idea of what has been happening. And so this is just a little bit about what we've been seeing. So as of June of 2020, we know that about 40% of US adults has been struggling with mental health and substance use. And when we look at those numbers, thing is this is how it's broken down, that about 31% of people are saying, yes, I'm feeling anxious and depressed, that 26% are having trauma and stress related responses, 13% have either started or they're increasing their use of substances, and 11% are expressing suicidality. So you can see why it is so important to be talking about today, not only how to have self-care, but how to have a sense of, as Lonnie was saying, that was a fast 4 minutes, but also to have a sense of how we cope and move through it. And that's really what I want to highlight today. So the first thing, because we are going to get into how we make a meaning, but the first thing I want to talk to you about is self-care. It's the idea that we start at a foundation, and the foundation is really just the basics. And I would not be doing a service if I didn't talk a little bit about self-care and the basics. And those are just basically making sure that you have a good diet, that you're hydrating, that you're sleeping well, that you are exercising regularly, because that is the foundational pieces of mental health. When I started, because I do a lot of webinars and presentations on self-care, on coping skills, and I wanted to look out and see if there's other things that were kind of newer that people were talking about a little bit more now. And I found this at the Mayo Clinic, and I thought I really love this model, and so I wanted to include it. And what they talk about is the 4 A's. The first A is avoid, and I know it seems weird because we always say like don't avoid. And that's really what they're emphasizing. They're saying there's some things out there that you can't avoid. And if you can't avoid it, try to plan ahead, try to figure out what kind of skills you need, what kind of resources you need, and then do that. Also feel comfortable just saying no. I know it's really hard for us sometimes, especially when we have a sense of connectedness and community and family. It can be really hard for us to set those really good boundaries and limits, but this is a difficult time. And so being able to say no when you're unable to do something is also about love. It's about self-love and not resenting later that you agreed to do something that's maybe just really difficult for you in the moment. And this is one that personally I was like, I love this idea. I'm a list maker. I mean, I have books of lists everywhere for different reasons. And this one was about prioritizing those lists and understanding that you should have an A, B, and a C. A being the absolute most crucial things you need to get done that day or that week. And then B, less crucial, but probably need to do it, so laundry would fall there. And then C being, that's the sprinkles on the top of the cupcake. That's the stuff that, like, if you get done, like, good job, you. And I think that that's important because I've heard so many people say, like, I feel like I'm trying my best, but my best isn't good enough. And I always let them know your best changes from the day to day, depending upon how you feel, how you slept, how your relationships are going. So being able to be gentle and patient with yourself and to prioritize what's most important so that you can say no to the rest of your list if you need to, that's okay. Being able to alter yourself because you can't sometimes alter the environment. But if you can't alter the environment, think about doing that as well. So what that looks like is communicating, telling people that you're having a hard time and then asking for what you need, managing your time better. I think that we have sometimes an idea that our plates need to be full and that when they're full and we get it all done, that that is productive and that has value. And it's not to say that's not true, but it's also valuable to say that you rested, that you took care of yourself, that you enjoyed 30 minutes out in the sunshine. And that's part of why we were listening to that relaxing music and watching jellyfish, because I always tell people self-care doesn't have to take an hour. It can take less than 5 minutes a day. And that was less than 5 minutes. And you can see the return, though it's not an hour's return, it actually is kind of significant just to take 4 minutes to relax. And of course, set boundaries, be able to understand where those boundaries lie and why you might need it. That third A is going to be accept. I I always talk about radical acceptance, and I think because it is such a powerful intervention. When we talk about radical acceptance, if you're not familiar with it, it's basically saying, look at a situation or a relationship and ask yourself, what parts can you change and what parts can you not change? And that really comes back to being honest with yourself. Like Dr. Meyer was saying, like honesty and truth is so important. But to understand, if I can't change it, I need to learn to accept it. It doesn't mean I like it. It just means that's what's happening, and nothing I do is going to change that. When we apply that to last year, there's nothing I could do that would change that we were in a quarantine, that we were going through COVID. But what I could change and where I put my energy was how I responded to it, whether I complied or did not comply to safety regulations, whether I did or did not do my own self-care. Like those were the parts that were changeable and adaptable for me. And that's what I really put my time and energy into. I started to identify who my support systems were. And if I needed to grow it in an area, that's what I focused on. If I thought, I only have a couple people and they're busy and they have their own things going on, I joined new groups and tried new things and really was very mindful about what kind of a support system I thought I would need. And I practiced positive self-talk. I love that she does the I love myself, 1 is too little and 3 is too much. I think that's just such a beautiful message that she does when she does that, because we do need to be our own best cheerleaders. And then of course, adapt. So unpredictable sometimes what is coming down the line for us. Be able to adjust your standards. Again, that talks about like, if your best looks different from day to day, be okay with that. Try to learn to accept that there is a level of adaptability that has to happen, because it's harder for one day sometimes unexpectedly to reframe situations and to use radical acceptance to do that. And then to use a mantra, which we are going to talk about in just a second. And of course, have a bigger picture to know that things are going to change, even if you don't know when they're going to change. I sometimes tell the story of Thich Nhat Hanh. He is a pretty well-known Vietnamese Buddhist monk who was practicing during the Vietnam War. And people would come to him as a holy, learned man and ask him, when is the war going to end? And he went into a very deep meditation to think about that. And what he ended up coming back with, because he felt like he should have an answer, what he ended up coming back was with, I don't know when it's going to change, but I know that it's going to change, because the one consistent thing in life is change. And when you can hold on to that and to understand the big picture is, no matter how challenging it is right now, in the very near future, it won't be as much. Then that actually helps keep you motivated, even when it's kind of ephemeral, it's kind of undefined as to when that's going to happen. I'm just going to check yeah, people are talking about the 4 A's and the setting boundaries. Absolutely, yes. So what we're going to do right now, and again, you can do it with pen and paper, or you can sit here and just kind of enjoy the process. What we're going to do is talk about mantras, and we're going to create one for yourself. If you have a mantra that you use that is very powerful for you, then please feel free, if you're comfortable, sharing it in the chat. I think that it's really important to share, because people might see it and go, that really resonates with me, and I'm going to use that later. But what a mantra is it is saying that you repeat to yourself in a challenging time that helps motivate you, helps give you hope, and it helps remind you of your healing process. One of the mantras that I have used often and have taught people is that I can get through this. Now, that's not saying it's like broadly applied, because if you say I can get through this, part of your mind might go, but I don't know how. I don't know what I'm going to use. I don't know for how long I'm going to do it. I don't know how bumpy it's going to be as I make my way through it. But all of those things we accept with grace. How can I can get through this. The other one that I heard that I really liked, which I don't personally use, but I liked it a lot, is I create my own path and I walk it with joy. And that to me spoke a bit about radical acceptance, to be able to choose your path, even when the choices aren't always what you want them to be, but to choose it and then walk it with joy. So if you have a mantra that you already currently use that you find to be very powerful and you're comfortable with it, please feel free to share it in the chat. And for the rest of you who might not have a mantra, I'm just going to have you take a few minutes to think about, what is a simple sentence that you can create that both motivates you, gives you hope, and then highlights a sense of healing. I know that's a big ask. right? I'm going to check our chat. Lonnie shared, thank you so much for sharing, Lonnie. Lonnie shared, know what I am in control of and what I am not, and let the other go. That is a beautiful reframe of the rephrase of the radical acceptance mantra. Absolutely. This week I had worked with someone who was having a really hard time, and the mantra that they created was, it's okay that I'm not okay right now. I'll get through this. And I was like, oh, that's such a powerful message, to be okay with not being okay. When Dr. Meyer was talking about us sometimes just saying we're fine when we're not fine and not really speaking our truth and being really honest, I think that there was a power in that mantra that allowed people to come in and provide that support. So take just another minute or two to think about what your personal mantra would be. And as you create them, if any of you are comfortable with sharing them, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm always about volunteering by choice and growing by choice. So don't feel like you have to do it if you're uncomfortable to do it, but if you are, absolutely feel free to drop that in. Oh, thank you, Christopher, put in today. I'm brimming with energy and overflowing with joy, and my fears of tomorrow are simply melting away. So beautiful. Uh, the NAMI family is saying, chanting inwardly the Hawaiian vows. Absolutely doesn't have to be words if it's a sound or a musical pattern that is very soothing to you. Absolutely. Sometimes people just sing their favorite songs or hum the music to something that's very powerful to them. Sonia, I am enough. Absolutely. Taryn, just take things a day at a time. It is okay to feel this way. I am human too. Yes, absolutely. Beautiful. Thank you so much. If you haven't finished your mantra or you weren't comfortable sharing it, keep working on it. I think it's just so important to be able to have a phrase to kind of go back to and to lean into. Lisa put, gratitude is my mantra. I look for gratitude in every situation. You know, Lisa, that is, I always say, easier said than done, but it's very true. It's hard to have gratitude when you're hurting, but it's also so important to see that pain can be the greatest life lesson, the greatest teacher, if you can figure out the gratitude in it. Edwina's talking about just kind of feeling the feels when she needs to and getting that good sleep. Rest, absolutely. Perfect. Thank you all so much for sharing. We're going to talk a little bit now about, Audrey is talking about wanting to develop one, appreciating nature and focusing on the breath. Absolutely. We're going to talk a little bit now and shift into meaning making and why it's important. There is a positive association with being present in that process of making meaning of a situation and having good psychological well-being. So basically what that means is if you come into a situation that is challenging and you're able to apply what you believe and make sense with that system about what is happening, then you feel better than if you couldn't do that. Again, whether it's organized, non-organized, or just about your own beliefs and values and morals, any of those systems work as long as you have one, because those systems are going to provide you a framework. You're going to be able to say, this is what's happening, and I need to be able to have this as my coping skill. What meaning can also do is it provides a sense of purpose, that it brings meaning to your life. It helps clarify those values that you have. And when you're able to clarify your values, you're able to prioritize all the different aspects of your life. And when you can see that, it decreases your stress. And then you have better coping skills because you know what to target and what to use. It also helps you just connect with the world. We've been talking about Indra's net and connectivity, and there was some Buddhist philosophy in what Dr. Meyer was talking about. And those are such wonderful principles and beliefs to talk about in terms of no matter what you come from, feeling connected to other people, being able to feel peaceful, even when it's challenging sometimes. looking at that support system again, and then you get those health benefits of knowing that you're not alone. Also learning to relinquish control. This is one I have a hard time with. I know people who also share that challenge, but understanding that you're part of a much larger system. When we talk about our community, when we talk about the world, but like, let's talk about when we talk about aloha in our community here in Hawaii, how important it is to understand that there are people who care about us, who love us, and who are there to provide that support, how that makes us feel like I don't have to carry the load all on my own. I can share that burden because I also share my joys. Sometimes people feel like they can't reach out and ask for help because it adds a burden to someone else's pack. But if they're also sharing it with you, then it's a shared burden and it's a shared load, and that's an easier travel. So we're going to have a little bit of a discussion, and again, grow by choice, whatever you're most comfortable with. But we're going to talk about what helps you make meaning. For some of you, you're going to come from your religion of choice and go, this is how I make meaning of this. And for those of you who are still kind of walking through it and trying to decide what meaning making is for you, or that maybe your system is changing as you've gotten older or when you come up against these challenges. So we're going to have a little bit of a discussion, and I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. First one I'm going to talk to you about is, what are your most important relationships? Then we're looking at priorities. We're looking at your values. And once you understand what those most important relationships are, you can start to see where you want to put your time in. You're comfortable with sharing, please feel free to pop into the chat what some of your most important relationships are. It's definitely family. Carrington, my family. Kelly, my children. Kara, family and close friends. Lonnie and Debbie, family. Amanda, immediate family. Children who are growing too fast, always. Taryn, family. Kelly, employees. Lisa, family and husband. NAMI, family, myself, spouse, immediately family, closest friends, and nature. Beautiful. Thank you. Your next question is, what do you value in your life? Sandra. Ohana, Akua. Edwina. God. Kelly, my support system. God, husband, children, family. Yourself. Thank you, London. Absolutely. Good health. Love in the Aina. Yes, Lonnie. Faith, family, health. Sandra, sharing aloha with others and giving I receive. Yes. A safe support. Yes, Amanda. Absolutely. We can love people who might not always be safe, and that's okay. We just have to set those healthy boundaries. God and love. Thank you, Christopher. Assisting others with love, her sons and husband. Thank you, Lisa. Kara, too many things to name. Absolutely. The gift of life, presence, love, and aloha. Oh, compassion as well. Compassion is a very hard gift to maintain and to give when we're having a hard time, but is probably one of the most crucial. It's how we show our love. Absolutely. Other questions to think about that we won't put in the chat, because I have a couple more that I wanted to talk to you about to put into the chat. But you can also ask yourself what people or place gives you a sense of community. I think that's really important to know. And then, of course, what inspires you? Sandra put looking within to know thyself. We are going to be talking about that in just a second. Another question, what are your proudest achievements? And this one I would love if you want to share in the chat. What brings you joy? The past year has been so challenging, and 2021 has started challenging as well. And I think when we share our joys and our hope builders, then it's something that we can all look at and understand. I want that too, or I have that too. So if you're comfortable popping into the chat, what brings you joy or what gives you hope? I value compassion as well. What brings me, Debbie, what brings me joy? My family in pickleball. Debbie, I have no idea what pickleball is. Am I the only one? I love pickles, so I'm really deeply interested in what that is. Ah, that's awesome. What's been bringing me joy? I'll just share a little bit while everyone's putting things into the chat. What's really been bringing me a lot of joy, besides obviously like my family and my friends, has been gardening. I've really enjoyed. I grew up on a farm in the South, and I would love to have a farm again, but it's a lot of work. So I've just been really enjoying doing some small time gardening and seeing seeds grow. I don't know why. I love to have seeds bloom. I have about, oh my gosh, I probably have like 20, 30 seedlings right now, all waiting to come out of the ground, and I stare at them every day. Sandra put seeing growth in my adult children. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Edwina said, joy is sing my Hawaiian ohana every Saturday, zooming. That's such a beautiful ritual. Joy is a difficult word for me. Andrea, watching children play and animals. Yes, my pets. Oh, love them. Karen, I gave birth during a pandemic. Brings me joy, faith, and love. Gives me hope. That's what Lonnie said. By being outside and exercising. Taryn, way to go. That is a story, right? You know, the stories that your parents always tell you. That is one. Kara, sunshine in the ocean, connecting with family and friends, compassion and support from everyone that's being offered. Absolutely. The NAMI family. Sunrise, smile and laughter of myself, being with like-minded others, dancing. Ah, yeah, absolutely dancing. All these wonderful things that we still have in our life that bring us joy, that bring us hope, is so important to hold on to be able to validate and know that, like, even during a challenging time, we still all have these pieces to really hold on to. Amanda was saying having more free time during the pandemic um, has given your kids more time to explore personal interests. Yes, there is a silver lining to everything that happened, whether it's resetting how you spend your time and really looking at what you value, or it's getting back to a little bit more of a traditional way. I haven't played board games in probably a very long time, and I now have a collection. I love playing board games with my family here. You know, you sometimes just change how you want to spend that quality time. Sandra wrote, informing, igniting, and inspiring my students to believe, behave so they can become the best to see it come to life. Oh, how beautiful. Lisa, nature brings me joy. Yes, yes. Love for others in the world gives me hope, the belief that love is greater. Yes. See, so beautiful to learn so much from so many of you. Speaking truth, encouragement, and dreams. Yes. So I don't know if you noticed, I always do themes. I love theme anything. Give me a project, I'll put a theme on it. What's behind all of these different slides, if you've been tracking, is actually the theme of my presentation, in terms of, like, it's not texture. It's, for me, when I thought about the idea of wholeness and meaning making, I actually thought of the Basilica de la Sagrada Familia, because as we move into talking a little bit about the story of being whole as a person, this is what I thought about. When I was much younger, I went to Barcelona and had heard, oh, you have to go to Sagrada Familia. And when we went there, the picture on the left is what I saw and what I had imagined. There's a very famous architect whose name is Gaudi, and he's really well known because he does this amazing mosaic work, but it's also because he started Sagrada Familia. He started this cathedral, and he believed that the imperfection, the things that you find in nature, the organicness of something, is what makes it beautiful. It's not the repetition that's perfection, it's the imperfection. And he fully embraced it. And you can see it's very organic, that photo on the far left, very beautiful, very different. Like, you're like, what is that made of? It almost looks like a stalactite or something you would find into a cave. He passed away without ever having finished the cathedral. And when, it's almost like one of those mystical stories, and when they went to hire someone to finish the cathedral, they couldn't find the molds. And they needed these molds because of how organic his work was. So they hired someone, and that person was like, okay, I can do this, I can finish it. So the picture on the top right is the next architect's attempt. You can see their idea was to repeat with perfection what Gaudi had already done. And it did not match. people were very upset and said it lacks the essence of what he was trying to do. And so that was not a very popular addition, and yet it remains there. They decided they would hire a third architect to design the entrance of that new expansion. And this person said, Gaudi cannot be replicated. It is not doable. And so I'm just going to do what I want to do. And they did. So that bottom right photo, they just went industrial. They were like, nope, I'm just going to do it my way and have my own vision. And that's what it is. And I think the reason that I chose the Sagrada Familia as a story about the whole is that at our core, being organic, being imperfect is what makes us so beautiful. And that if we try to create something that's a little bit more digestible, a little bit more like everything else, what we come up with is something a little less inspiring. And so it's really important for us to embrace all aspects of self, even those imperfect parts. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But it's also to understand that a different vision, a different part of yourself can also be a crucial addition or place to explore, because now this basilica is extraordinarily well known. I think it might even be a UNESCO site. People travel all over the world to join there and to see a basilica that's comprised of so many different parts that are so unique. So let's think about that as a metaphor for ourselves. What are the different parts that make us up? So I think that you can do a big umbrella and you can think about it being the physical parts of yourself. You can think about it as being the emotional and the social parts of your life. And you can think about it as being that spiritual meaning making part of your life. We're going to talk a little bit about one specific part. And the reason I bring this up is because it has been a difficult time, and there are parts of ourselves that we don't always want to embrace. I'm going to talk about it a little bit from a Jungian perspective, a Gestalt psychology perspective, but outside of that, it's really about understanding how to love all of yourself. So Carl Jung said that in every person there is this part that is the shadow. The shadow is the part that you don't really want to come into contact with. He said, where there is light, there must also be shadow. So he understood that you could not have one without the other. So what is your shadow? It's the part of yourself that you don't like. It's the part that you want to ignore. It's the part that could be petty, that could be irritable, that could be, self-critical. It's the part that maybe is negative in the way that you feel it or experience it. And part of doing the work to become whole is to, instead of like pushing it into the background and leaving it in the dark, is to actually stop and turn around and embrace it. We call that doing our shadow work by embracing the shadow. It's looking at all those parts of yourself and understanding its role and saying that part needs to grow and have support. When I worked, because my specialty is actually doing trauma work with people who've survived, typically complex trauma. A lot of people I've worked with have survived sexual trauma and assault. When we've done that work, oftentimes when they talk about their shadow and how self-critical it is, how untrusting it is of being able to have like a gut feeling and trust that, or to feel like they can make a good decision, they see that part as a part that needs to be ignored and done away with. And I actually explain it to them that we create the shadow. It isn't born with us, we create the shadow. The shadow's job was to protect us. At some point, we either internalized an outside voice to be our own, or we created one. And it is a protector of sorts. And it worked when we created it. But when we hold it and let it grow and then put it into the darkness and don't look at it again, it stops learning. And when it stops learning, it keeps applying old methods to new situations, which is where it's no longer functional. And so I would say when we do our shadow work, part of it's to say, it's okay. It's okay that I might feel petty or jealous or have those kinds of emotions that's coming from my shadow. So let me turn around, let me stop and figure out why that's coming up for myself, but also love that part, because that's the part that needs it the most. So you can see how you grow self-love through really embracing the wholeness of yourself, the good parts and the more challenging parts, and the parts that maybe we're not as comfortable letting other people see. I'll be very transparent. I am not one to cry in public. I'm not actually one that cries a lot. I'm very stoic. But like I shared, I've recently been through a very difficult loss, guided my parent through hospice and passing away at home. And so being transparent and being honest, the part of my shadow is the one that says, like, don't share that or don't talk about that. That's very private. To be able to say, you know what you need most is not to hide that. What you need most is to be honest and transparent and sharing in that moment so that you can get support or at least live in your truth. And that's what I have to work on. So we all have things and we all have challenges, but this shadow work can actually help us get through that. When we work on our shadow, when we love that part, it actually means that you're embracing your worth, all of it. That it's not the part that's the best, that's the curated part that everyone sees on social media, that it's the messy parts, it's the difficult parts that still have worth. And that's really important because we have difficult days, that we know that things will change. And so it's okay if that's my shadow because I'm going to help love it and let it grow. Not permanent, I can help my shadow grow. And so that's also great to know because as long as I keep challenging it to grow and love it through that process, it will get smaller and it will change with me. And part of it, there's that lesson again that I was just talking about, is to say it's okay not to be okay. It's okay that it's a shadow day and that you woke up having a hard time or you find yourself in this moment having to embrace your shadow when you weren't thinking that you're going to have to. That can be your mantra too. It's okay not to be okay and to share that with other people. So, what does it do when you do the shadow work? It actually helps improve your intuition. You can trust your now, you can trust your gut because now you can say, it's fallible because I'm human, but I can also trust myself that I can learn to heal and grow it and have that intuition be a part of my like emotional toolbox. You can empower yourself into that growth, learn what your strengths are, the parts that we show to the world, those are our strengths, but also you can look at your shadow and see that that's the part that is your challenge, but is also the place that's going to grow the most. And that's a really beautiful thing. When I thought about the activity that I wanted you to do, of course, mantra work came up, and then having a discussion about all these different values and beliefs. But often when we talk about those things, people will say to me, like, how do you have the time? Like, I love this idea. Roger put, take your mess and make it a message for life. Yes, absolutely. People often tell me, and I think this myself, is like, how do I have the time to add anything extra into my world because it's already feels so overwhelming. And one of the practices that I've been working on that I found really helpful is this idea of making intentional life choices. So we're going to do a little bit of a time awareness activity because this is also about intentionality and prioritizing. So, what you're going to do, if you have your paper, or even if you want to just use your phone to jot it down, is you're going to think about the big activities that you do for the week. And then you're going to jot those down. So, I'm going to give you a little bit of time to do that while I check on the chat. Working on that. Yes. So, just take a few minutes to think about what your major activities were, and as you're jotting them down, also jot next to them how much time you spent doing each one of those things. You don't have to put like 20 of them. Just think about your maybe most time intensive or most prioritized ones. Listing those down, and again, just putting how much time you spent doing each one of those activities.
Is this for like last week?
Yes, you can do last week if that's easier, or if there was a week that really stands out for you that you're like, that was kind of a difficult week. I just want to see what happened there. Feel free to do a recent one.
Thanks.
And for some people, their weeks are pretty scheduled, so they know that that's typically what it looks like, and so they're going to do a more general one. That's fine as well. So listing those activities, putting how much time you spent on them, and for those of you who work just a little bit quicker, you're going to put some kind of a marker, a symbol beside them. One symbol is going to be, did you do it for yourself? And the other symbol is, did you do it for someone else? So oftentimes people will heart the ones they did for themselves and star the one they did for someone else. Use whatever symbol you're comfortable with and however you choose to mark it. But yes, we're doing a list of major activities, time spent for each one, and then heart if you did it for yourself and star if you did it for someone else. Thank you. Some people are putting them into the chat privately to me. That's totally fine. Excellent. So for those of you still working, now that you have your activities, how much time you spent on it, put which ones you did for yourself and which ones you did for someone else. And then think about each one and ask yourself, did you want to do it or did you feel like you should do it? Very subjective, so it's up to you as to kind of how you categorize each one. But yes, just looking at each one of those activities and asking yourself, did you want to do it or did you feel like you should? You can also do a symbol for those if you want to. Um, whatever makes it easier to kind of categorize it for yourself. I saw something pop up in the chat. And there, yes, thank you. There are some activities that are both, and that is absolutely fine to mark them as being both. That you both wanted to do it and then felt like, oh, I should definitely do this. Kara noted, practice is such a great reminder of intention, why you're doing something, how it serves you, what's the energy behind it. Yes, very welcome. It's a beautiful comment, Kara. So moving forward with that list, each activity that you wanted to do, I want you to pick a couple of them and think about this statement. I wanted to do this activity because. And it's highlighting that intentionality. I wanted to do this activity because it makes me feel good, because it helps me with my self-care, because it's part of how I make meaning in my day or in my week. So for each activity, or you can just choose a couple of them if you have a very long list, for each activity that you wanted to do, just look at that item and ask yourself, I wanted to do this activity because why? What was its value in your meaning making moment? And then for each should activity, the ones that you felt like you should do, ask yourself, I did this activity because why? And I think this is where we start to make those really mindful choices. For those should activities, I do this activity because why? And what would happen if I didn't do it? Is there a benefit that you're getting from doing it? So giving just a little time to kind of choose a couple of your should items and walk yourself through that process. I do this activity because what would happen if I didn't do it? And what benefit do I get when I do it? The idea behind the time awareness activity is exactly what they were saying in the chat. It is being intentional and mindful about why you're making those choices. And I think that when you start to look at that list, that the reality is, yes, I feel like I should do laundry. I feel like I should do some of the things. And there are benefits when I do some of those things. But if some of them are not serving me, if some of them are more about doing things that help me ignore my shadow or to appear a different way for other people, or about that I have a difficult time setting boundaries. And that's really why I ended up doing that with that person, is to be mindful of that, but then to also start to prioritize. And then you can see where time can be brought back into your life to do some of those other things and why it's so important. I like the time awareness activity because I end up looking at the should category way more and then asking myself, like, why do I do that? That was not very beneficial. I'm going to take that out and add something in that I want to do that is also beneficial, or that I should do but don't want to do, exercise, but that is very beneficial and very helpful. So I really do like this exercise. Feel free to keep working on your list throughout the day. But if you ever want to kind of reference back here to do this activity again, you will be getting the PDF of the slide. So you'll have all this different information to look at again if you just need a little bit of a reminder. I'm going to talk a little bit about resources because I think that, walking us through this process of learning more about who we are as people, how we can be more holistic and supportive of one another. It also is about just concrete resources and skills to be able to use. We talked about self-care, so now I'm going to go to that other end and talk about other things that can be helpful. These are two apps that I really like, and I don't recommend things that I don't personally use. The COVID Coach, I love it because it helps you do relaxation, track your mood. It also gives you like recommendations on how to learn different coping skills. It is from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs and the National Council for Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder. Highly researched, highly backed, and highly used. It was very helpful for myself, and I still recommend it to people to be able to manage and relax and to practice those. They also created this other app. These are both free. And that app is CBTI. What we do know is that sleep is one of the first things that gets affected when we're stressed. We know nationally about 30 minutes of sleep for everyone has just become less quality. And that really adds up over the days and over the months at this point that we've been experiencing that. CBTI helps you track how well you're doing with your sleep. You can set reminders if you're still like reading that book, cleaning the house when you should be winding down. You can set a reminder to kind of, nope, I need to kind of get into my sleep ritual. But it also teaches you new tools. I sometimes think I do a great job at sleeping, or it's not that bad. And then when I track it, I go, oh, it's so bad. And then I know that needs to be a priority because I really need to rest and rejuvenate. So I recommend these apps. I was sharing some different information with you earlier, but if you're interested in doing more of those 4-minute meditations, we actually have several up on our YouTube, which is MHAH of Hawaii. So you'll see that information down below. None of them are over 5 minutes. They're all 4 and a little bit over. And they're different things. You can watch water, jellyfish. There's one on ice that we have different ones that come out every month. And you can just kind of take that time to either listen to the music or to watch it and listen and practice that deep breathing. We have a Facebook page, MHAH of Hawaii. If you're looking for some free community trainings, that's where you can go to get that schedule. This Thursday, we're actually introducing our brand new Keiki self-care webinar, and I'm so excited about it. I made it and it's adorable. it's so cute. But it's also where I finally get a chance to talk to parents and to caregivers about how to teach their kids self-care and mindfulness, no matter how small they are. Because I used to nanny and I used these skills with a 2-year-old and they were effective. And I would be like, okay, I learned this, let's try this. And they were very responsive. And I was like, yes, this can be done. That is found at our Facebook page. We also have different Facebook groups. The Busy Bees page, so cute. It's for parents and keiki that want to get more information about like activities and books and just different things that are keiki related. We do have a book club. Sometimes we'll put out books that are just about like self-care or psychology, and sometimes they're just fun books. I recently shared, it's going to be posted soon if it's not already up, having read Neil Gaiman's Coraline. So like, it was such a great book. So we do share some of our favorites. Some of the staff will do a theme, and we'll all share the things we've read. I have different people from the communities just share their favorite books. And then, of course, the book lists. I am an avid book reader. And then MHAH of Maui, which is all about Maui County and their trainings and their different opportunities. And then we do have an Instagram, a general account, and that's the information for it. And the one I always love to highlight is our Live in the Now, which is all about small bite-sized pieces of self-care. It pops up and just reminds you, like, take that deep breath, go for that walk, dance in your living room for 5 minutes. It's just a little daily reminder to do something, and then we make recommendations, and you can choose, do that or do something else that popped up during the week. If you're looking for some of the things that we have talked about or that you'll see in other trainings, really when we have things, for example, we do have mindfulness coloring sheets for the kids. If you're looking for some of those, you'll go to our website, which is mentalhealthhawaii.org, click on that Get Connected banner, and then you'll find our online resources are on that one button. And then the printables is where you'll find a lot of really cool stuff, especially if you're looking for mindfulness for keiki things. We do every few months make new coloring sheets, whether it's to teach them how to check in, teach them how to do meow breathing instead of diaphragmatic breathing, just all kinds of different alternatives. So if you're looking for that, that's a great place to go. I want to thank you so much for coming today. I know that it has been such a wonderful, beautiful experience to share the sacred space with all of you, and thank you so much for sharing. I definitely needed to be here today and to practice what I preach and to really open to the experience of healing with Dr. Meyer and with all of you. So thank you so much. Try not to get emotional again, but I really appreciate all the joys that you shared, all the hope that you built with me today. If you're looking for any additional information, we are in office, we are working. Feel free to call us if you ever have any questions, you're looking for resources, or you just need someone to talk to for a little bit. Our Maui office number is that second number, that 242-6461. That's our address. And then if you ever have something that you want to email us, you can always email info@mentalhealthhawaii. I'm going to open up the chat just so I'm saying, oh my gosh, thank you guys so much. Mahalos. Thank you. I hope that, through it all, that we can continue to share our aloha and share what we learn with others. That's how we build our resiliency as a community. And I always feel so blessed to be able to sit with other people who have the wisdom to share or the experience and the compassion to share with me. So thank you all for coming in today